Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to Michael G. Thank you for using my Tesla referral link and congratulations on your new Tesla. Earlier today, Elon was running some streaming tests on X, and have a listen to what he said.
Grok and Teslas is coming soon. So you'll just be able to talk to your Tesla and ask for anything?
Hey Kristen, yeah, all Teslas will be able to use Grok. Because the intelligence of Grok kind of lives in the cloud in the data center, so it doesn't matter what's in the car. You can just chat to Grok in the car.
Definitely the one I've been waiting for. Now, yes, there are still plenty of questions, and yes, he said the dreaded coming soon, so it could be 2 weeks, it could be 6 months plus. For now, my main question is how integrated will Grok be with the Tesla UI and Tesla features? So will this be a major improvement to voice commands for control functions? Or to start, will it just be Grok's more traditional functionality just in your Tesla vehicle? Either way though, the ability to talk to it, aka audio inputs, is exactly what I was hoping for, so a very encouraging update. And to everybody that argued XAI would be a distraction for Tesla, if and when this feature comes to fruition, that'll be a pretty strong counterpoint.
Tesla full self-driving unsupervised. I think we mentioned we actually are doing trials of that for Tesla employees already, and we expect to have that in commercial service sometime this year, which I mentioned at the last earnings call.
Just to be clear, that last clip is not actually news when it comes to unsupervised FSD trials already taking place internally at Tesla for employees. We were reminded of that on the Q3 call. NHTSA has opened a new probe into 2.6 million Teslas over Smart Summon. Just know some of the reports on this news are conflating actually Smart Summon with regular Smart Summon. But this preliminary evaluation is based on reports of 4 crashes involving Tesla vehicles. The vehicles failed to detect posts or parked vehicles when they were operating on actually Smart Summon. NHTSA said it had reports where users had too little reaction time to avoid a crash, either with the available line of sight or releasing the phone app button, which stops the vehicle's movement. Remember, the 3 steps for NHTSA are 1. Preliminary evaluation, 2. It could be upgraded to an engineering analysis, and then 3rd would be a recall if it gets that far. NHTSA said it will assess actually Smart Summon's maximum speed, use on public roads, and line of sight requirements. The probe will also cover remote control through the phone app, the impact of connectivity delays, and the system's performance in unanticipated conditions. One complaint said a Model 3 in Houston in 2023 struck a parked car with a passenger inside. But we need to remember that actually Smart Summon wasn't even released until 2024 in the fall. On that point, NHTSA said that regular Smart Summon was the subject of 12 separate customer complaints. NHTSA said Tesla had not reported any of the crashes despite rules requiring manufacturers to report crashes involving automated driving systems. This investigation by NHTSA does cover the entire sexy lineup. I'm sure many of you remember years ago, most analysts were saying that Tesla's regulatory credit revenue was about to go to 0, and here we are in 2025, and it may continue to increase. Already for 2025, Stellantis, Toyota, Ford, Subaru, and Mazda are planning to join an EV credit pool with Tesla. The EU's CO2 targets for this year are about 15% lower than 2021 levels, and experts say automakers will have to sell at least 20% full EVs, while the EV market in Europe is stuck around 14%. Missing the target results in a fine of about $98 per gram of CO2 over the limit per vehicle. According to an estimate by the ACEA last year, automakers could face a total of more than $15.5 billion in fines. However, to highlight the uncertainty of these figures, Transport and Environment said that the fines may be around $1 billion. A European EV analyst said that the rush for automakers to form pools showed automakers were seeking an early backup plan if EV sales don't accelerate. Tesla will be the manager of one of these open pools, and the Tesla Group is open to new applicants until February 5th. Tesla's regulatory credit sales through the first 3 quarters of 2024 were $2.07 billion. For all 4 quarters of 2023, they came in at $1.79 billion. For all of 2022, they were 1.77 billion. And for all of 2021, they were 1.46 billion. So it's been years since those analysts made those predictions, and not only have Tesla's Reg Credits not gone to zero, they're still increasing. This Compare the Market company put out the most searched car brands for 2024. Just focusing on North America, Tesla took home the #1 spot for Canada and the US, whereas the most searched brand in Mexico was Nissan. In 2023, Toyota was the #1 brand in 64 countries, and that has not changed for 2024. However, Tesla has risen from being the #1 brand in 29 countries in 2023 to 34 in 2024. For the past 5 years, Toyota has held the top spot in terms of number of countries where they're the #1 search. But Tesla is charging ahead, as in 2022 it was not even on the list, and as of last year it's in the #2 spot again, with even more countries searching for Tesla the most. There was plenty of chatter out there today that Tesla stock was down because of this note from Bank of America, so I wanted to touch on why I don't think that's the case. BOA said that Tesla's latest valuation already reflects long-term growth potential, including robotaxis. Tesla is trading at a level that captures much of our base case long-term potential from core autos, robotaxi, Optimus, and energy generation and storage. In their eyes, they're saying that robotaxis already account for about 50% of Tesla's valuation. And based off today's closing price, that would be about $600 billion. I'm sure many of you heard Jensen say last night at Nvidia's keynote that autonomous vehicles will be the first multi-trillion-dollar real-world AI industry. Per the usual though, these analyst notes leave us scratching our heads. No different this time around. BOA raised its Tesla price target to $490 from $400. However, they said the execution risk is high, so they downgraded the rating for Tesla to neutral from buy. That implies nearly 25% stock upside in the next 12 months, but they have a neutral rating. And at the end of today's video, I'll explain why I think there's a lot more going on that was a driver of Tesla's stock price today. We got the Tesla China weekly number for week 1 of 2025, and it came in at 5,500, which yes, is the best first week ever. Week 1 of quarter 4 came in at 1,800, so quarter over quarter, Tesla China is up over 205%. Week 1 of quarter 1 last year came in at 3,200. Thus, year over year, Tesla China is up 71.8%. The new record quarter for Tesla China was quarter 4 last year, 194,952, meaning Tesla would have to average over 15,788 units per week over the next 12 weeks. And of course, the year-to-date figures are just the same as the year-over-year comparison. For this reading, it was about 1,100 Model 3s and 4,300 Model Ys. I'm in a data kind of a mood today, so I wanted to quickly share some of AG1's clinical trials. It was shown to enrich the gut microbiome, more than doubling the levels of healthy bacteria known to bolster digestion. Specifically, a 2.9x increase in the healthy bacteria in the gut. That relative to the control group. I can tell you right now, if you've taken antibiotics or NSAIDs like ibuprofen or Advil in the past few years, there's a very good chance that your gut biome could absolutely use some help. Last time we talked about how roughly 90% of your serotonin production happens in the gut. Well, in an in vitro study of AG1, they found a 9.8x increase in serotonin production in the gut taking AG1. We haven't talked about this recently. Also in that in vitro study, the powder form of AG1 was seen to digest faster than a multivitamin tablet. Specifically, 4.4x more minerals available for absorption versus a multivitamin tab. And finally, in an observational study with regular use over 3 months, AG1 was seen to positively impact feelings of calm, energy, and improved digestion. I sip mine throughout the day, and it does really seem to help with any afternoon crashing. Plus, it's nice because I can drink it into the evening and not worry about problems falling asleep at night. And as I always say, we're all different, so if you feel like you want to support your energy levels, digestion, focus, etc., I just think it's worth a shot for a few months to see how it works for you. AG1 is still offering that limited edition gift, so if you'd like to support the channel and your own health, you can head to drinkag1.com/electrified to check it out. Or you can use the QR code on the screen. I think it'll be valuable to spend a bit of time talking about Nvidia's keynote and what it'll really mean for Tesla's FSD lead going forward. I've seen plenty of commentary out there that I certainly don't agree with, and I want to try to provide some data and facts to back that up. Just know some of my data and facts will be commentary from people that are actually in the machine learning trenches and really know what they're talking about. To start, Gary Black, who you guys know I have a lot of respect for, said Tesla will not be the only automaker with fully autonomous EVs. Tesla is clearly the market leader today with its generalized and scalable approach, but with Nvidia providing synthetic AI-generated driving data to any OEM willing to partner with Nvidia, others will get there too, and valuation models assuming Tesla with winner-take-all market share are unrealistic. Now, it's true, in the long term, we're talking decades, Tesla won't be the only automaker with generalized autonomy, but the question is, for how long will that be the case? I also agree that valuation models with Tesla taking 100% of the market share are unrealistic. But my main disagreement here is that for any OEM that's just willing to partner with Nvidia, that then means they're also going to have generalized autonomy too. So I just want to try to explain based on everything I've read and learned over the years why I think that is such a gigantic leap. First, if you did not see Nvidia's keynote, I really want to focus on one thing they announced, and that's their new World Foundation models. This offers developers an easy way to generate massive amounts of photoreal, physics-based synthetic data to train and evaluate their existing models. Developers can also build custom models by fine-tuning Cosmos WFMs, World Foundation models. This suite of open models that these legacy OEMs or robotics companies will be licensing from Nvidia means developers can customize the WFMs with datasets like video recordings of AV trips or robots navigating a warehouse. But for our purposes today, just think about Cosmos and how that's going to help these companies generate synthetic data. If you're not that familiar with Nvidia, the easiest way to think about it is like they provide toolkits to these legacy OEMs. So yes, Toyota can go buy these tools specifically built for autonomous driving from Nvidia, but after that purchase, all they have are some tools. They still need a talented team of machine learning engineers to put those tools to use and to actually build the project, which in this case is a model. As Ashok said in this video at CVPR in 2023, Tesla is already using very similar techniques.
So that's why we are working on learning a more general world model that can really just represent arbitrary things. So in this case, what we do is we have a neural network that can be conditioned on the past or other things to predict the future. So what you're seeing here is purely generated video sequences. Given the past videos, the network predicts some sample from the future, hopefully the most likely sample. And you can see that it is being predicted not just for one camera, but it predicts all the 8 cameras around the car jointly. And you can see how the car colors are consistent across the cameras. The motion of objects is consistent in 3D, even though we have not explicitly asked it to do anything in 3D or not. We haven't baked in any 3D priors. This is just the network understanding depth and motion on its own without us informing it of so. This is super powerful because now you have essentially a neural network simulator that can simulate different futures based on different actions.
My point, Tesla has been using synthetic data and simulations to augment its library of real-world video data for years. Late last year, Andre Karpathy said in the context of LLMs, I think synthetic data is absolutely the future. We're not going to run out of data, but we do need to be careful.
Right, but what about the argument, like in that domain, that was easier when we were taking internet data, and we're out of internet data, and so the questions are really around like synthetic data or more expensive data collection?
So I think that's a good point. So that's where a lot of the activity is now in LLMs. So the internet data is like not the data you want for your transformer. It's like a nearest neighbor that actually gets you really far, surprisingly. But the internet data is a bunch of internet web pages, right? It's just like what you want is the inner thought monologue of your brain.
Yep.
That's the ideal
The trajectories in your brain.
The trajectories in your brain as you're doing problem solving. If we had 1 billion of that, like AGI is here, roughly speaking. I mean, to a very large extent. And we just don't have that. So where a lot of activity is now, I think, is we have the internet data that actually gets you like really close because it just so happens that internet has enough of reasoning traces in it and a bunch of knowledge, and the transformer just makes it work okay. So I think a lot of activity now is around refactoring the data set into these inner monologue formats. And I think there's a ton of synthetic data generation that's helpful for that.
How important do you think the synthetic data piece is? Because when I
It's
talk to people, they say,
important,
yeah.
I think it's the only way we can make progress is we have to make it work. I think with synthetic data, you just have to be careful because these models are silently collapsed is one of the major issues. So if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it to give you a joke, you'll notice that it only knows 3 jokes. That's the only, it gives you 1 joke, I think, most of the time, and sometimes it gives you 3 jokes. And it's because the models are collapsed and it's silent. So when you're looking at any single individual output, you're just seeing a single example. But when you actually look at the distribution, you'll notice that it's not a very diverse distribution, it's silently collapsed. When you're doing synthetic data generation, this is a problem because you actually really want that entropy. You want the diversity and the richness in your data set. Otherwise, you're getting collapsed data sets. And you can't see it when you look at any individual example, but the distribution has lost a ton of entropy and richness. And so it silently gets worse. And so that's why you have to be very careful and you have to make sure that you maintain your entropy in your data set.
There's the context of that conversation for LLMs, but many of those principles will still translate when it comes to autonomy. In March of last year, Elon said the vector sum of humans on the team, usable compute, and unique access to data define AI competitiveness. It's remarkable how quickly we run out of human-created data, reality itself, and synthetic data for the win. In April of last year, Elon said 2 sources of data scale infinitely: synthetic data, which has an is it true problem, and a real-world video, which does not. You heard Karpathy talk about that model collapse problem when it comes to using too much synthetic data, and I found this paper exploring synthetic data for AI and autonomous systems. One of the most prominent risks with using synthetic data is called the reality gap. This refers to the subtle differences between the synthetic data and the real world. Sophisticated machine learning models often learn to exploit small discrepancies, making simulated environments difficult to learn from. In other words, if synthetic data is not simulated properly, it can run into issues of not being able to fully replicate the complex and chaotic physics of the real world, and may fail to properly capture the unexpected shifts or one-off cases that emerge in real-world data. Another way to think about this model degradation if you train with too much synthetic data is the telephone game. Ordinarily, every time the message is passed from one person to the next, parts of the actual message are lost. The same thing can happen with AI models. They make mistakes, they hallucinate, and over time, if AI is trained on AI and synthetic data, it can actually lose sight of the real world or the base that it's starting from. A 2023 study at Rice and Stanford found that over-reliance on synthetic data during training can create models whose quality or diversity progressively decrease. Sampling bias, or poor representation of the real world, causes a model's diversity to worsen after a few generations of training. And guess what? One of the ways to combat that model degradation with synthetic data is by balancing it out with real-world data. I hope that's at least a little bit of context to help explain that these legacy automakers having access to Nvidia's synthetic data is by no means a panacea to solving FSD. It absolutely has a place as a tool to help solve the problem, but the core foundation is always going to be real-world data because it's reliable. And one piece I don't see many people talking about, what about all of the intervention data that Tesla has that really helps to train the system? In short, Tesla is closing in on a decade being laser-focused on solving this problem with real-world data, synthetic data, simulation, a lot of compute, the most talented engineers, the best inference in the world, and yet the problem is still not solved, but they're close. So now to think that legacy OEMs that are mostly still at the starting line can just have access to this synthetic data from Nvidia and all of a sudden be on Tesla's level with solving generalized FSD, to me is totally insane. Even to think that they're going to figure it out in the next few years just does not make any sense.
Elon Musk is a customer of yours, and Tesla, their theory or practice is based on real-world data gathered through vision.
Yeah.
Does the synthetic data underpinning of Cosmos kind of contradict that?
It doesn't replace, it augments. And so you should collect as much world data as you can. Of course, collecting world data is very expensive. And Elon has a great advantage because, number one, his AI factory for his cars is fantastic. Has a lot of NVIDIA gear in it. His AV algorithms is incredible. It's the best in the world. and he has a very large fleet of cars on the road that allows him to collect a lot of data. And so I think he has just a phenomenal position, and he's been working on this for a long time, and so he's going to be in a great position to take advantage of it. I know Elon's attitude towards AI, and he's very optimistic about its future, and obviously he's working on some of the most important AI areas. XAI is working on foundation, cognitive intelligence AI. Tesla's working on autonomous vehicles. And Optimus is for humanoid robotics. These three areas of AI are the three most important areas of AI. And so I think he's working on exactly the right things.
When it comes to this Elon and Jensen takeover of the world, I think Phil Beisel does a great job of explaining it, and you guys know I like highlighting people that deserve more attention. In my opinion, Phil is one of those people. He said Tesla goes hard with hardcore engineering and produces real-world AI products, namely FSD for Robotaxi and Optimus. Nvidia sells massive compute to Tesla for training its real-world AI solutions, watches what Tesla does with their chips, does a copy light version of Tesla's work in the form of SDKs, which is software development kits, convinces OEMs like Toyota that Nvidia SDKs and platforms are the basis for their own AI dreams, sells those OEMs tons of chips for training, inference, and now generative compute in the form of simulation. Tesla demands more chips to push faster against the perceived competition in number 4, and then rinse, wash, repeat. Plus, you guessed it, these legacy OEMs that will buy inference and SDKs and compute from Nvidia will be paying those 50% plus margins to Nvidia. So right out of the gate, just when it comes to the hardware and software suite for autonomy, legacy OEMs will be at a much higher price point. Then when you layer in the skill of building EVs profitably at scale, the challenge becomes that much harder. And guess what? These legacy OEMs still all need to buy these tools from Nvidia, get them integrated into their vehicles, which we know is going to take 3 to 5 years, and then they need to get that fleet on the road to begin collecting real-world data. And at that point, they can begin to augment that with some of this synthetic data.
The AV revolution has arrived. After so many years, with Waymo's success and Tesla's success, it is very, very clear autonomous vehicles has finally arrived.
Elon shared a post from Sawyer saying correct, in which Sawyer said, "This seems like it's aimed at legacy automakers that have virtually zero real-world video self-driving data collection. They're years behind Tesla and have no real shot at catching up." He said, "Synthetic driving data is kind of like using ChatGPT. You might trust what you see is true, but you often can't be entirely certain without further validation. In contrast, real-world video driving data is reliable and represents true, legitimate scenarios as they occurred. It's the superior method for solving self-driving as long as you have enough video data collection." When it comes to Jensen saying that self-driving vehicles will be the first multi-trillion-dollar robotics industry, Elon replied saying Jensen is right. May of 2024, Jensen said Tesla is far ahead in self-driving cars. The story is still the same even after last night. In theory, yes, Nvidia's advancements should help legacy OEMs to solve generalized autonomy a bit faster. But the way I see it, I don't see any legacy OEM solving generalized autonomy anytime before 2030. The only way that would happen is if they choose to license FSD from Tesla and get to work effectively now. And don't misunderstand me, what Nvidia is doing is incredible and impressive and will be very valuable to the industry. The problem is we know too much about that legacy industry we've been covering now for the past few years. They move slow, they don't have software talent, and they're not making EVs profitably. And nothing Nvidia said last night changes any of that. Tesla's supplier Panasonic plans to eliminate its supply chain dependence on China for EV batteries made in the US, likely in response to the fact that Trump has vowed to impose tariffs of 10% on global imports into the US, along with a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. In November, he specifically pledged a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. Panasonic said, "We do have some Chinese supply, but we don't have a lot. The bulk of the raw materials for Panasonic Energy's US-made batteries come from overseas suppliers. The bulk of the raw materials for Panasonic's US-made batteries come from overseas suppliers, including ones from Canada." It's speculation on my part, but this could cause a slight bump in cost of goods sold for Tesla in the near term. At CES, Honda gave us a bit more information on their 0 Series models that are set to enter production in 2026 in Ohio. We don't have the official names, but a midsize SUV is set to come first. They're both supposedly going to have level 3 automated driving. The plan is to launch in the US first and then head to Japan and Europe. We really don't have much information about the vehicles other than the steering wheel, suspension, and brakes will be controlled by a steer-by-wire system. And the word is this sporty saloon is going to follow the SUV in the latter part of 2026. Tesla has asked a court in Sweden to ensure that the country's transport agency provides access to license plates that are currently blocked by postal workers in a wider labor conflict. While the postal blockade makes access to license plates more difficult, Swedish media has reported that Tesla has found ways to circumvent the unions by asking car buyers to order plates themselves. Tesla has already lost similar appeals in other courts, so we'll see how this one goes. Speaking of Honda, they also have their partnership with Sony, and they announced that their vehicle, starting at over $102,000 that will only be available in California, is set to arrive in the middle of 2026. Then in 2027, a less expensive version will be priced at just under $90,000. Right now, you can reserve an Afeela 1 with a $200 deposit. It'll have a 91 kilowatt-hour battery pack with an EPA estimated range of 300 miles. It will have a NACS port as standard, but the charge rate is only up to 150 kilowatts. For now, the companies have not announced when and if it'll be offered in other states outside of California. So yeah, color me quite skeptical with this one. Tesla stock closed the day at $394.36, down 4.06%, while the Nasdaq was down 1.89%. As you can see though, it was a red day across the board, so it's not just like Tesla was down because of that BOA downgrade. The volume for Tesla was 14% below the average. As promised, just some quick context for what might also be going on in the markets, and with Tesla, you know I've always said that the macro drives things first. Well, since the Fed pivot just over 100 days ago, the 10-year Treasury yield has actually gone up over 1%. So the Fed has been cutting rates, but the 10-year is actually up 1% over the past 3 months. You can interpret this in different ways, but it feels like the market is not buying this Fed pivot and is actually still pricing in the fact that inflation may not be done. I know that most people here do not want to hear about the macro space, but I need you guys to know it's crucially important to the direction of stocks. And trends like this do not usually happen, and in those cases, the market is telling you something. Don't forget to check out AG1 links below if you're interested, and as always, thank you very much for considering supporting the channel in that way. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Please like the video. If you did, you can find me on X linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.